So I want to take a moment here and I want to pause and I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, the imposter syndrome. Anybody ever heard about the imposter syndrome? Anyone familiar with that? Well, I talked about those 500 buttons and knobs in the cockpit of that aircraft, and I have to share with you that I've had that moment to where I've sat in the cockpit of that aircraft, several 100,000 pounds, couple 100,000 pounds of fuel, 200 to 300 people in the back of that aircraft, and I've looked up there in that cockpit and wondered, am I going to remember what the right button is at the right time? And I've questioned, am I qualified to do this job? I've questioned myself, am I worthy to be sitting in this seat? How many of you all have experienced that moment where you felt like you were an imposter? You were afraid that someone was going to find out that you were a fake, that you were a fraud. I've experienced that. I've had that feeling where I wondered if I belonged. I wondered if I was good enough. I wondered if I could actually fly this jet from Paris back to Chicago or from Chicago to Paris. I've had that question and I've doubted myself. And in that moment where I wondered if I was good enough, I wondered if I was an imposter, I began to ask friends, I began to ask mentors to help me to explore this idea of my feelings. And in talking to some friends and mentors, someone told me, they said, well, Jason, here's the thing. This is the interesting thing to know is that the person who is the imposter, they don't have imposter syndrome because they already know that they are a fake. Right now, whatever you are going through, right now, whatever you are dealing with, right now, whatever challenge you are facing, I want you to know first and foremost that you are the right person for the job. I want you to know that you belong in that seat. I want you to know that you belong in that leadership role. Whatever it is, you are the right person to do that job, to execute that mission. And I want you to then reflect, what are you going to do to get beyond that imposter syndrome? For me personally, I fell back on my training. I fell back on my process, and I made certain that I remembered that with that training, with that process, I was able to empower myself to go out there and execute the mission and do the job. And so that no fail trust, it's not just for the people that work for us, that work with us. It is for us to apply to ourselves first and foremost, especially if we are dealing with this thing called the imposter syndrome, to know that we are good enough, that we belong, and that we've got this.